California. My name is Masika Henson. I'm the program strategist consultant for SAFSF and happy to be here with you all today. I want to first shout out our partners for this webinar, those folks that we worked with on this and who will actually be presenting today. Shout out the Mississippi Center for Justice, the Center for Heirs Property, and the World Wildlife Fund. We're so happy that they're here with us today. Excited to hear from them. And yeah, happy you all are here. So, for those of you that don't know about SAFSF, aka the Sustainable Agriculture and Food Systems Funders, uh, we aim to foster collaboration among the full spectrum of funders, field leaders, and practitioners across the US, all with the shared mission to advance equitable and sustainable food and agriculture. This June, we're going to be hosting our annual forum in Savannah, Georgia, a place that meets land, where land and water meet, where Afro-Indigenous and Gullah Geechee stewardship meet Southern agrarian futures, and where today's climate crisis meets rural disinvestment and new opportunity. So, for those of you who haven't been to the forum before, funder learning is the central goal of our forum, but we have nonprofit movement leaders and food systems partners that join us who are integral to the success of that event, bringing the on the ground wisdom and solutions for our food systems. So, as you know, we're facing a moment of profound transformation. I think transformation is one way to describe it, but there's a lot happening in the US right now. A lot of our safety nets and our foundation is being kind of cut and broken down right in front of our faces. So, as we're facing that moment, the forum is going to be a place where folks can gather, where we can make sense of what's happening and also start to talk about solutions, and also just be in solidarity with each other. So, as I mentioned, us being in Savannah, Georgia is so important in so many ways, but we know that the South, the US South, is a fulcrum of the American food and agricultural system. And we know that community-led solutions from that region can offer us models for the rest of the US and the world. And that's what we're hoping to kind of like start to look at today with this conversation is what is happening in the South and what solutions we could take from, I don't want to say the word take, but what solutions can we glean from the South that can help us in this system that we're in? So this year's theme for the forum is ancestral futures. And so throughout the event, we're going to be addressing what a food future would look like if we embrace ancestral traditions. What can that future look like? Today, this is the first part of a two-part webinar series. We'll start to embrace that future. We'll take a deep dive into the topic of heirs property as a land title issue and how addressing heirs property through education, technical assistance, and legal support unlocks opportunities for productive land use, resilient forests, and opportunities for wealth creation. We'll explore the heirs property model developed, tested, and implemented by the South Carolina-based Center for Heirs Property, or also known as CHP. This has been developed. This has been a project of theirs for over 2 decades, so a long time. A lot of wisdom coming from this group. This effort is also aligned with the Mississippi Center for Justice's expansion of its heirs property work, establishing it as a key legal partner in the region. So I'm excited to have two great speakers with us here today. Dr. Jenny L. Stevens, the CEO of the Center for Heirs Property, and Andrea Barnes, the director for the Heirs Property campaign at the Mississippi Center for Justice. They're going to be joined by our moderator, Carrie Cesario. We talked about this. Carrie's last name gets pronounced many different ways. It is Italian. I got to work on my Italian. That's what I know.
It was beautiful.
Thank you, Carrie. Carrie's a senior vice president for forests and freshwater at the World Wildlife Fund, also known as WWF. In her role, Carrie oversees a portfolio of initiatives in pursuit of WWF's goal to conserve the world's most important forest and freshwater ecosystems, collaborating with an array of partners, including those you're going to hear from momentarily. So with that, I will turn things over to Carrie and have Carrie introduce our speakers and get us started. Looking forward to this conversation. Thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you so much, Masika, and thank you to SAFSF for hosting today's webinar. I'm so honored to moderate what is sure to be a compelling discussion with our good friends from the Center for Heirs Property and the Mississippi Center for Justice. Today, we'll be delving into the topic of heirs property, a leading cause of involuntary land loss for Southern and Appalachian families, and its impact on both communities and the fate of American forests. This conversation will showcase the power of partnership in tackling issues at the intersection of racial equity, environmental justice, and sustainability. And importantly, how sustainability and environmental justice are not only complementary, but synonymous. We're going to leave some time at the end to take your questions. But to get things started, I would like to welcome the CEO of the Center for Heirs Property, Dr. Jenny L. Stevens. Jenny has led CHP or CHIP since its inception in 2005, focusing on helping families protect and keep their family land, build generational wealth, and grow working landscapes. She has worked for more than 25 years in the nonprofit sector, in positions as varied as the fiscal director at a community action agency, the sponsored programs director at a historically Black college, and a senior program director at the Coastal Community Foundation. Jenny, can you tell us a bit about the Mobile Basin Heirs Property Support Initiative, which was launched in October of 2021, and how and why the center is involved? But before you respond, I would be remiss if I didn't first acknowledge and celebrate CHIP's 20th anniversary last year. So that's quite a milestone, and I feel like that warrants a little round
Thank you.
of virtual applause. But over to you, Jenny.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate SAFSF for creating space for this
It's like you
conversation.
think my last name is hard to say. Say
I
that 10
know,
times
right?
twice.
um, at its core, heirs property is a land title issue that limits how land can be used, managed, and transferred across generations. And when ownership is unclear, families face barriers to accessing resources, making decisions about their land, and fully realizing its economic value. Oftentimes, our families see it as a liability rather than an asset. So the Mobile Basin Heirs Property Support Initiative, another long name. Obviously, we like long names. It came about through a convergence of aligned efforts. What's interesting as I sat back and looked at this is that each of the partners, they were already working on different aspects of this issue. It just so happened that those efforts aligned at the right time. So in 2018, CHIP had developed its strategic plan, and we had gotten many calls from people across the country asking us for help. And unfortunately, we'd have to tell them our attorneys are only licensed in South Carolina and we couldn't help them. So um, as we were developing our strategic plan, we just had this idea is what if CHIP could replicate itself? What would happen, or what would it look like if we shared our model with organizations in other states, and so that they could provide the legal services that these families kept asking us about. So we established that goal. And then around about the same time, the World Wildlife Fund and Kimberly Clark, they were examining the Mobile Basin region through the lens of forest sustainability, biodiversity, and long-term fiber supply. And they had identified heirs property as a key underlying issue affecting both forests and communities. And the Mississippi Center for Justice had just received funding from its state bar foundation to expand its portfolio of legal services to help heirs property owners. And the executive director at that time had said that she had been stalking me, and so they'd been watching Chip, and so she had that, when she had that opportunity, she called and just wanted to learn from us. So you see what started as single organizations with an idea, right, about how they wanted to expand their work. It just so happened to become a coordinated effort. Each partner was bringing a distinct role and set of resources to address the shared challenge. It's also important to note that even though CHIP is much varied now and we do more than just legal services, but that is how we began. We were a nonprofit who focused on outreach, legal education, and direct legal services. Excuse me. So as we entered this initiative, we naturally started with the legal services component. And it was a given that partnering with MCJ would position us, who already had the experience, would actually help expand this work even faster. So what we're focused on today is how that foundation was established. And in part two, you'll hear directly from the land use and implementation partners who are carrying this work forward on the ground and demonstrating, how this model functions as a coordinated system across organizations. So that is my explanation of the Mobile Basin Heirs Property Support Initiative. Thank you,
Yeah,
Carrie.
thanks, Jenny. It's a good overview and a good reminder of how the pieces came together. Maybe we can dig in a little more on that, turning to Andrea Barnes, who I'd like to introduce to tell a little bit about how the model came to life in Mississippi. Andrea is the director of the Heirs Property Campaign for the Mississippi Center for Justice, which is a public interest law firm focused on advancing racial and economic justice through an approach that combines legal services with policy advocacy, community education, and media outreach. It's really a fantastic organization. Prior to joining the center, Andrea practiced estate and probate administration, family law, personal injury litigation. Her professional experience also includes service as a fellow with the American Bar Association in the Real Property Trust and Estate section, a law clerk with the Circuit Court of Hinds County, Mississippi, a prosecutor with the Hinds County Attorney's Office, and as a public records officer and staff attorney for the Mississippi Department of Corrections. So she is very well qualified. And I'm delighted to turn to her for her to describe the Mississippi Center for Justice and its role in this initiative. Over to you, Andrea.
Thank you, Carrie, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Carrie, for your partnership, and to SAFSF for hosting our discussion on today. As noted, I've worked on heirship issues throughout my legal career, but quite honestly, my interest in the subject goes back a little bit further. You see, growing up, my grandparents were farmers in a rural county. I was privileged to see my grandfather and watch my grandfather save whatever he could to buy land. And so I had a front row seat watching my grandfather work that land to a very young age to learn the importance of legacy. I learned what it meant for families to own land over a course of generations. And as you shared, though MCJ and we call the Mississippi Center for Justice, it's affectionately known as MCJ. So although MCJ formally adopted the Heirs Property Campaign only about 5 years ago, Heirs Property is work that MCJ has been doing since 2006. After Hurricane Katrina, there were Mississippi landowners who had to establish ownership of their land to gain access to resources that they needed to restore, to rebuild, to repair their homes and their lives after the storm. They had those storm damaged properties. So at that time, what the Mississippi Center for Justice did is we stepped in to provide that service. So while undertaking this work, what we realized at that time is that we were filling a void in our state where low-income families who were unable to protect their family wealth, their land, without direct legal service needed our assistance. So since Katrina, MCJ has continued to advise people on what their options are and in heirs property situations, assist Mississippians with heirs property issues, enabling landowners to actually get the most use from their land and maximize their land's value. So after our former executive director had stalked Jenny, we were thrilled when Jenny called us and approached MCJ about this particular opportunity. We were extremely interested because what we recognized and understood is that this particular opportunity could provide substantial benefits, especially to Black landowners in our state. So in Mississippi, historically underserved groups, primarily Black families, have involuntarily lost hundreds of thousands of acres because of discriminatory, legal, and extra-legal actions carried out over the course of many decades. So by implementing CHIP's tried and tested model to address these heirs property issues, MCJ increased our capacity to assist socially disadvantaged and underrepresented low-income families in protecting their land and their legacy. Now, in addition to providing legal assistance so families could establish ownership of property, MCJ also works to educate communities in the targeted area. And we do that by explaining what heirs property is, the pitfalls, what people can do to resolve title issues, and then also avoid heirs property issues in the future. So by maximizing their land's value, socially disadvantaged Mississippi families are empowered to stabilize and strengthen their communities and to use their land to create generational wealth. And quite honestly, Carrie, on today, MCJ's goal is really simple. We are here to help property owners keep, protect, and utilize their land for generations to come.
Thanks so much for that, Andrea. And it's so interesting thinking about the roots of some of this work going back to Katrina. Before we move into the discussion, we want to share a video that features the Robbins family, who are Mississippi landowners who have been directly impacted by heirs property issues. They're joined in the video by Mr. Frank Taylor of the Winston County Self-Help Cooperative, which is an organization dedicated to helping families like the Robbinses maintain their land. So let's hear what they have to say on this issue.
If you got land, you had it made. You could make everything else, but you couldn't make no more land. You can go out and buy a car, you tear it up, they could make another car. But if you got land, you hold on to it. You don't get rid of it, because there's something they can't make no more.
19 of our brothers and sisters and I was born on this land in Winston County, Mississippi. And we were happy. We had 3 meals a day because on a farm, you never run out of food.
I also remember and had friends that lived on, that were sharecroppers, and that way it taught me the importance of having your own, because they were working someone else's land and not owning any land. And I was fortunate enough to be married in this church where my father had donated the land to build this church.
And I was fortunate to be married in the home place.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The USDA had monies that you could use to rehab your farm, and we had timber on it, so timber was the thing that we thought about. that we could sell and then refurbish with timber, because we know how important timber and the trees are to our livelihood. And we find out that there was 1 acre that this young man has put his name on as an heir to the property. So I don't understand how someone can come in and go to the tax assessor's office and put their name on somebody's property, but he went in and he was able to do it. So it has caused problems for families, such as ours, that we can't do what we want to with the property that we own. I have 3 grandkids. He has 3 grandkids. She has 3 grandchildren, and we want it there for them, So it's keeping us from moving forward with what we plan to do for our future generations.
The most important thing is that when you own land, you have a place and what we call a placehold here in the United States of America. Ownership means something. Ownership creates value. Ownership creates great community, and ownership creates stability. Personally, in my family, I had an uncle in 1974 lost 100 prime acres of land due to Heirs Property, and they sold it to the highest bidder. And I joined the Winston County Self-Help Cooperative, and that's what we've been doing as an organization over the years, is to help individuals to work through the maze of these kind of issues, because it impacts African-American families more so than the mainstream families. So partnering with the Mississippi Center for Justice, which have interest in serving individuals who lack of financial need in order for them to bring resolve. So joining with MCJ, man, this is super. This is something that we needed.
Today we met Vangela Wade of the Mississippi Center for Justice, and we talked to her about considering taking our case to get this 1 acre resolved on our heir property.
We never had no intention of selling the land.
No. Because it has value, and it will have value for my future generations, They can also harvest the timber off the land and then replant it for their next generation, because it has value. So no, you don't sell your land. You hold on to your land.
I'm always grateful to the Robbins family and to Mr. Taylor for allowing us to share that story, because I think it provides a really personal perspective and brings to life the issues of heirs property in Mississippi. With that great background, including the comments from Jenny and Andrea, I want to delve into the partnership in more detail, including some of the milestones. Maybe I'll just say a few words about WWF's interest and engagement in this, because I think sometimes it seems like the outlier, a global organization working on conservation. I think the reality is that WWF has had a deep understanding of conservation challenges facing forest owners globally. We've been dedicated to rights-based approaches and working with local communities around the world to secure legal titles to their lands, to support the realization of their visions for nature-based income and opportunities. And then we also work with companies that source fiber, including from the Southeast US, to create more responsible supply chains and support the resilience of forests and the people, the communities that steward them. So I think with the opportunity to support this initiative in the US, we wanted to continue to elevate and raise awareness to the prevalence and the long history of heirs property ownership and its connection and impact on the environment and human well-being across the US. I think we really believe that it's only through preventing the exploitation of families and their land that we can prevent further forest fragmentation and loss in this country and mitigate some of the worst effects of nature loss, climate change, and impacts on communities. So we like to say that forests are a source of health and wealth, but certain things need to be true for that to be borne out. And I think the burdens and benefits of caring for forests have not always been shared fairly. So I think in the face of projections about forest loss in the Southeast, it's quite dramatic. We're on track to lose up to 23 million acres by 2060. And that's in part driven by unsustainable and rapid development. We've been really honored to partner with Kimberly-Clark to support this pilot, and just the amazing opportunity to engage with leaders in this space, such as CHIP and MCJ. And then we had the addition of International Paper as a supporter to the initiative's expansion into Alabama in 2024. So, okay, with that little interjection, I want to go back to you, Andrea. As we look back on the history of this initiative, can you talk about some of the biggest wins, some of the learnings we've seen? How's it going?
Thank you, Carrie. One of the biggest learnings I believe we've seen with this particular initiative is that effectively addressing heirs property requires an infrastructure that is built on trust. That's trust in the community, trust with partners, trust with funders, trust with landowners. What we've seen is that we're stronger together. And as the community, partners, funders, and landowners align, we're better able to create sustainable change and then provide that outreach and education, that direct legal support, and also the technical assistance. I get excited just thinking about, I guess, lesson learned and biggest wins. When I think about the initiative, one of the other things that we've seen also is the importance and the power of partnership. We've been afforded the opportunity to engage with others in various fields who have unique perspectives, and they add value and contribute to how we actually address heirs property issues in our state. One of the things we readily saw when we stood up and we started this initiative is that the demand for assistance to help resolve heirs property issues is great in our state. And so through this initiative, we have been able to expand our capacity to serve more landowners with timely, specialized legal support. We've also been able to, build those strong coalitions and partnerships to advocate for policies that protect property rights, policies that protect legacy, that preserve generational wealth. And we've been afforded the opportunity to actually stand in the gap to provide access to families who, but for the work that we do, wouldn't have access to the court, wouldn't have access to resources. And this enables these landowners to get the most use from their land and then to maximize the land's value. So, and the last thing I think I'll share in terms of wins and learnings is we've assisted families with avoiding foreclosure while resolving their heirs property issues. And I think by far, this will always be one of the biggest wins that MCJ is proud of. We help people remain housed. We help prevent and protect the land and maintain those family legacies. So as a protector of legacy, right, as an heirs property practitioner, MCJ is humbled and honored to be a part of this important work.
It's really fantastic. I mean, it's so heartening to be able to see the results already from what started out as a pilot. And I think because it's been a pilot, I know amongst us all as partners, we've talked a lot about the learnings and sort of how to go forward, and really have wanted to take heed of that. Jenny, I want to turn to you in considering the success of this initiative. What are some of those best practices that we seek to continue as the partnership goes forward? Could you say a little bit about that? Jenny's always teaching me lots of lessons and best practices that I try to take up all the time.
I don't. I'm very shy. I don't talk that much. Well, that's not true. But I want to back up. I realized I didn't, when you asked me about the initiative, I didn't point out that the Mobile Basin actually covers 2 states. It covers a piece of Mississippi and a piece of Alabama. So that's one of the reasons why you heard us talk about MCJ, because that is the relationship we had in Mississippi, and that's why we went there first. I just wanted to relay that to everyone. Okay, so what are the lessons learned? Is that there is no silver bullet for heirs property. It requires more than a single intervention. It requires a coordinated model that includes, as we said earlier, legal support, education, technical assistance, And one thing I would really stress, it's hand holding. Yes, we say heirs property is about land, but mostly it's about families, because if you don't address the family dynamics, and I know, Andre, you could say amen to this, you're not going to talk about the land. So it definitely is that hand holding, that coaching this needed. And it doesn't have to be among one organization. That's the part about seeing the various agencies who have different missions, but they're still looking at the issue of heirs property from a holistic perspective. What has worked well is the ability to build local capacity. And Andrea said some of this. Chip had no one to lead the way for us. We learned, we stumbled, we messed up, but we did eventually get it right. But that was one of the things in wanting to do this work, is to help speed up the process so that it could get to more landowners. Um, excuse me. It's important to note that Chip, wrong thing, sorry. And I don't know, sorry. Um, Andrea referred to this too, about partnerships. You'll hear us say that, and I know it sounds funny, but I'm like, Chip really never does anything alone. Um, we have figured out what works, what's our lane, and we really do try to stay in that lane, but we have other partners who can take up the areas of slack that we don't have. Um, Definitely diversity in partnerships, whether or not, it's the conservation arena, or whether or not it's economic development, or if it's community-based work. It takes all of that to address the issue of heirs property. And that's key. The answer is not just legal or the law as a solution for heirs property. So just those are some of the lessons learned, Carrie.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm glad you touched on just sort of this, expansion with Mississippi and Alabama. I think one of the things that have been so inspired by your vision, Jenny, under your leadership, and with Chip, is just this opportunity to continue replicating the model where it could be adapted. So I want to ask you, what's next as we look ahead, both longer term and maybe in the very short near term as well?
Well, we had a couple of incidences since 2025 that has required that we now focus on strengthening our current network, even though we had anticipated and bringing more partners to the table so that they could utilize the portions of CHIPS models that worked for them. We are a very ambitious organization, and we often notice that we may take on a little more than we should. So that's why we're kind of slowing it down and making sure we're maintaining quality service delivered. I remember the gentleman from KC, when we first started having the conversation, he's like, well, I need you to under promise but over deliver. And sometimes Chip does we're gonna over promise, but we're gonna do it because we said we're gonna do it. So definitely slowing down, looking at what is actually needed, making sure the landowners are receiving quality services, quality relationships. And the fact really it's about them gaining access to the programs that they need. And we all know that heirs property is that major barrier that they cannot access. We live in Hurricane Alley over here. So whenever there's a natural disaster, if you're on heirs property, you may not be able to access FEMA's funds to help you. So our part two will focus on how the network of partners is implementing the work on the ground and what it looks like in practice. This was just an idea, but now we're able to look at the successes of the partners to help us learn what worked and what didn't work so that we can share that. I would also say, you said, else is coming? And I mentioned to this earlier, the fact that we are facing a shift in federal priorities. CHIP, as I said earlier, we have actually, it's 3 federal grants that have been canceled for us, but 2 of those were significant. And not only did the cancellation of those grants impacted CHIP, but they also impacted all 7 of our partners. And because the way we designed it, it was never about one state. It was about the Southern and the Appalachian region, because we wanted people to also see that Heirs property is not just prevalent among African Americans.
Yeah.
You know, I took a tour with one of our partners in Kentucky, and literally we were in a beauty shop with one of their clients, listening to her story, her family story. And I'm like, wow, I could be back in Charleston in a beauty shop run by a Black person, and I would be hearing almost the same thing. So that was the thing for us, is this overcoming now the challenge. In 2025, it was almost approximately $3.5 million that we lost. And in 2026, it's about 6 million. And so that money was to be spent over a 2 to 3 year period. As I said earlier, it was designed to expand our services and to reach more families, because that is the reason why we're doing it. Several of our partners, and a couple of them who are on this webinar, they lost additional federal grants. So this has not just been limited to USDA. It has been pervasive, which is unfortunate. One of the things we can always track is the fact where we know how many families who are actually accessing USDA programs. We know whether or not they get a farm and track number, or if they've received some kind of cost share program. So really, it is about a coordinated model and having the funds to do that, but also making sure there's that mixture of legal support, education, and technical assistance. As I said earlier, it really is about partnerships. And when the funding shifts, it limits access to those services for the landowners. It slows down the ability of the system to function effectively. Not because the need has changed, and you've heard Andrea said this throughout her presentation, but because the infrastructure supporting landowners become less accessible. It is also important to recognize that when land remains in the form of heirs property, and I hinted at this earlier, is it becomes more difficult to transfer that land to the next generation. And if you have an up and coming young and beginning farmer in your family, if you haven't resolved title, then you truthfully can't pass that down to that young farmer. And I think the average age of a farmer now is 57, I believe it is. It's in that number. So long story short, I think what this initiative demonstrates is that addressing heirs property, it requires sustained, coordinated investment. And our goal eventually is to diversify our funds so that should there be a shift in policy, whether or not it's at the federal level or at the foundation level, that we are able to just keep marching and not miss a beat. And so that's what I see in the sense of us being overcomers of what has been thrust upon us to continue to make sure the landowners are receiving what they need.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jenny and Andrea, for sharing your thoughts on this. And I mean, it's a remarkable story, I think, of what can be achieved, but if we can keep it going, right? I mean, we have some good momentum, and I think hopefully we'll be able to extend these efforts and this result, I think the great results so far. I know we want to turn to Q&A, so I think, Masika, I'm turning it back to you to help facilitate Q&A, and I am really looking forward to the questions from the audience.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Carrie, Andrea, Dr. Stevens. That was wonderful. Um, I've already learned a lot from you just in this short time we've had, so I really appreciate it. And just like hearing so much about like the importance of partnerships and the power that's in the collective. That's really coming forward for me right now. So yeah, we've got some time left in the call here. Want to hear from you. We do have, I see one question already in the chat, which I'll turn to now. I love this, Devin. Thank you so much for this question. So the question is, what are some of the legal differences and commonalities across states? What is the history? CHIP is based in South Carolina. This webinar has focused on the Mobile Basin, Mississippi, and Alabama. What does coordination across states look like? From Devin Foote. Thank you so much, Devin.
Let's see. Andrea, I'm going to leave the history to you if that's okay. But in the sense of CHIP, yes, CHIP is based in South Carolina, and we are, I like to say, because people say, oh, Jenny, you're the founder of CHIP. And I'm like, no, I am the founding steward because this is the community's idea that we're implementing. And it came about because there was a prevalence of African American losing their land on the coast of South Carolina. You know, what used to be marshland that nobody wanted to, be next to, live because it wasn't productive. But now that marsh front land is very valuable and families have been losing it. And that was why CHIP was created in South Carolina. Why are we talking about the Mobile Basin? I guess, as I said earlier, it really was that perfect storm, knowing that we were receiving calls from families across the US and we could not help them. Then what we felt our role was to amplify what we're doing and amplifying that by expanding and helping other organizations do the work and sharing our knowledge. What does coordination across the state look like? Well, CHIP has a chief partnerships officer, Danielle, who's on wave, Miss Danielle, who's on this line, and she and her department, I think Alexa is on here also. They are convening our partners, and as a matter of fact, the partners just left from South Carolina last week. We were here gathering and learning from each other. So yeah, that's that coordinate. That's how coordination happens. And there's a lot of coordination that it doesn't have to come through CHIP because all of our partners know each other. They can pick up the phone or visit to find out information. So I hope I answered your question, Devin. And now, Andre, if you want to talk about the history.
Okay, yes, thank you, Jenny. And so in reference to, I think your question is some legal differences, commonalities across states and kind of what that looks like. At the end of the day, when we talk about heirs property, I think the commonality is, how we define it, right? And how we see it, how it shows up in various states. The differences are in what the law says in terms of the toolkit or the resources to resolve it. So at a foundational level, we see it that we see the same things happening to families in terms of fact patterns and how they are left with the family land, i.e. heirs property. And what we also see across states are similar direct legal actions that one can file in an effort to try to resolve those title issues. And the only difference would be, let's say in South Carolina, for example, to probate a will or to file a direct legal action in reference to a will, there may be a 10-year statute of limitations to do that. And in Mississippi, there isn't one, right? But at the same time, in terms of moving forward, to actually probate a will or go to court, to determine that to be the last will and testament, that's the same in the state, right? The state just determines how that's going to happen, and therein lies some of the differences in that regard. I think in terms of history or just the history of heirs property, what we all recognize and understand that it's not just a South Carolina issue, it's not just a Mississippi issue. This is like a nationwide issue, and so practitioners throughout the nation are dealing with this particular issue. And we've just been afforded the opportunity to partner and collaborate with CHIP a trusted partner in this space who's been doing this work to strengthen the work that we do as an organization.
And actually, if I could add to that, you will see that the majority of the research that's conducted on heirs property, it's usually on African American families, which makes people think that that is the major group that has the issue. But so I always point that out as, well, no. So somebody, and there are a couple of researchers who have done, I believe, the Appalachian region, but I just want to point out the majority of the research that you will see has been conducted with African American families.
That's really interesting, Jenny. I was kind of curious on that. Are there other terms that are used besides heirs property?
Yes. If you're Native American, they usually call it fractionated land based upon how, and I'm going to get this wrong, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, how they've decided to capture it or measure it. Then literally we started an upstate, because Charleston's along the coast. We started a project in upstate South Carolina, and we had an attorney who just kept saying heirs property, heirs property. People like, I don't have any heirs property. And then like, oh, so you're talking about family land. And so there's a distinction, you know, everybody has their definition of it. So they may not use the term heirs property, but if, you know, but you do hear, oh, it's, yeah, that's my family's land. And it's true, but I'm just saying they just don't understand, because they have been creative enough to utilize the land and to keep it in the family. Yes, thank you, Danielle. And Danielle pointed out in Philly, they would call it tangled title. So it really does depend where you are and what people are more familiar with.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Um, we do have another question here in the chat. Also want to remind everybody, if you have questions, please place them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. We have a question from Claire Fox, our executive director of SCFSF. Claire would love to learn more about the intersection of resolving heirs property issues with conservation or climate resiliency efforts. How does this resonate for the families? Is there something they are motivated by or not so much? And are there specific tools to support sustainable land use?
Oh, so our families don't tend to think about climate from that perspective, because this is the land that they have been practicing organic farming on before there was a term organic farming. And so I can tell you one thing that our families don't like is that they are very hesitant to sign to place an easement on their land, because it's a hard concept to grasp that you're giving up your rights. You're not giving up the land. So your other question, yes, we have a sustainable forestry program, and trees capture carbon. And they clean water, and so there are a lot of, what is that word? Because I don't like it, ecosystem services that you can benefit, that, the families are actually providing, that they don't know they're providing. They just know, oh, our community's been resilient after we've had these back-to-back 1,000-year floods, right? So that they've understood that something has changed and that it's not the norm, but they also recognize that the trees, those things have played an integral part in making sure that the families can literally bounce back from the natural disasters that keep coming.
Jenny,
As a matter of fact, we were talking about fires right before we got online, but go ahead, Carrie.
Well, just maybe to compliment your great response there. I think just to be super clear, because obviously as the conservation organization sort of, joining in this effort, I think on the research side, what we were seeing was that there was a strong overlap in coincidence of where there was likely to be heirs property issues, and those forest lands or working lands in general that were critical from a climate resilience standpoint. So areas that you would want to maintain some basic element, like components of nature to address some of the things that you were specifically talking about, Jenny, right? So like resilience in the face of fire, flooding, et cetera. I think we've also known just from our experience on working on issues that secure title to land is one of the um, a critical factor in maintaining forest cover, right? It's not a guarantee, but it is one of the things that is like very influential. That if regardless of where you are in the world, if it's not clear who has ownership or who can conduct activities on the land, it's likely that there will be more likely that there will be loss of forest. All that said, I think our, just to be very clear, I mean, like our expectation is like, hey, if you can resolve tenure issues for families, it is up to them what they want to do with that land. And if they, like that is, that is in like implicit and inherent, I think, in all this. But I mean, you heard the Robbins family, right? I mean, there's a opportunity if the desire is to generate, well, income from sustainable forestry, and if there's opportunity to access services or and technical assistance to do that, and to make sure you're getting top dollar, and I mean all these things, I think that's where you see the convergence, but it's not as you said, like this is not a program where there's an expectation to put easements on the land or to sort of commit to any particular protection or conservation outcomes. But I think what we see from a system standpoint is that when you solve for some of these other issues, a lot of other issues get sorted out in the process in terms of just sustainability across communities and sort of society as a whole.
Right. And it's also been proven if people are generating income from their land, they're more likely to have a succession plan or will.
Exactly.
So all of
Yeah.
those things come
Right.
into place. It's when it's dormant or they don't, as I said earlier, they see
Yeah.
it more as a liability than an asset that you have the hands off because I've got to deal with 5 cousins and that I don't want to talk to them. So it's key to have the opportunity, because what we say to our families is we want them to make informed decisions. Now, we won't provide them extended legal services if they want to sell their land, but that is, as Carrie said, that is their right to make that decision. So that's our job. It's not to tell families what to do, but it is our job to give them as much information as possible so they can make informed decisions.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We do have one question, another one here. We've got 5 minutes left. A question from Connie. Connie is asking about what's happening in terms of leveraging heirs property for debt and credit. Is there anything specific? Connie says, I'm thinking specifically about the approximately 70% uninsured population of people in St. Louis whose homes got fully demolished during last May's tornadoes, who need liquidity to make their homes livable again, and in the future to insure their said homes. There are a lot of titles lacking for some of these multi-generational homeowners, and that is serving as one of many barriers to them to any form of aid.
And so the question is, the question is, you want to know what are we doing or how many families are accessing capital? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I guess I'm just asking if there is like I know that like I was just listening and just thinking about my neighborhood. But yeah,
Right.
I know it's a little stretch from ag, but I can think about how I can leverage my family's farmland to get capital. Are there
Correct.
programs like that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, because USDA has one of the largest programs that people who are either in traditional ag or they're tree farmers. It's called Environmental Quality Incentive Program and Community Stewardship, something other, Conservation Stewardship Plan. So yes, there are areas out there where if you do have clear title, you can access that. I mean, even by having clear title, you can get a loan, you can get a mortgage, you can get things that everybody else can get if you have clear title. We partnered with the researcher from the U.S. From the Forest Service station at UGA, University of Georgia, where they examine probably 10 to 15 of Chip's former families whose titles were cleared, and they kind of also went around the region. And what they found is that after title was cleared, families did not want to get a loan. They did not want to encumber that asset. I mean, yes, it's there and it's available, but I guess they're thinking about, oh my God, how much I had, all the difficulty I went through to get here. And it also is an educational opportunity for people to see that not all debt is bad. So I hope I answered your question.
Awesome. Connie says, thanks in the chat. Thank you so much. We are coming up on our time, so I want to kind of wrap us up here. This has been so informative and just I feel so honored to be here with you all. Dr. Stevens, Andrea, Carrie, thank you so much for this. This was a great prelude to our next conversation, part 2 of this webinar series. It's going to happen on May 6th, same time. So May 6th at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you, Maggie, for putting that in the chat. Please, if you haven't signed up for that one, please sign up. Share that information with your folks. We're going to hear more about how this initiative has been implemented on the ground. So we're going to dig deeper into that. And we're looking forward to it, looking forward to seeing you. And yeah, I just want to thank you so much. If any of the speakers have any last words they want to say, I'll open the floor to you now for that.
Quickly, I'll do a quick commercial. CHIP has established its policy priorities. Our next webinar is on June 23rd, and it will be on resilient and affordable housing. So go to our website so you can sign up, and we'd appreciate it. And thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Stevens. Appreciate that.
And
Andrea?
I'll be brief. I'll just say again, thank you all for having me on today. Happy to share and be in the room with MCJ. I will say that our Heirs Property campaign turns 5 this year. So we're excited about the growth, excited for the sustainability that we're still here. Starting Friday, we'll do a series of blogs and vlogs in reference to the work and the impact of the work that we have in Mississippi. So be on the lookout for that.
Thank you. Carrie, anything?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for this honor to be able to be amongst these amazing women doing such great work. It's really my privilege, and thanks all for the engagement of the audience.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you on May 6th.
All right.
Have a
Thank you.
great day.
Bye-bye.